Hi Malissa, I'm re-recording this video just in case I recorded a 30 minutes video explaining all the changes that I have for these DOMs, but it's a super long video. So I'm re-recording this video to just comment all the notes really fast. So the thing is, like, I wanted to find a middle ground between what we have right now and how can we simplify even more the layouts, so I can standardize the coloring process for all the painters to have an easy time and just replicate all the same things that the original BG painter will do, instead of having to paint every BG in a different way because maybe we find different props or different designs. So I look at this Powerpuff Girl episode. I will send you the link, and I really like how they simplify the shapes. Here, for example, we can play around with super sharp corners, and this is the way that we can simplify like all the props or all the rocks around. Like, or we can add this type of things in the ground. Here, for example, we can play with super simple shapes, and the way they break the buildings are not that complex, are just cutting the cube shapes into super triangular inside shapes on those buildings. Here too, this is some variety that we can add. This building like bending, cracking a little bit, but again, the way they cut these buildings is super simple, but at the same time they are using these black shapes to show the inside part of these buildings that are broken. Here, for example, in the foreground elements, we have these buildings which are also broken here, and they are showing both the inside part of the building and the outside part of the building with a super simple shape design style. This is how we can push the shapes of the building in three points perspective in some scenes that I will mention. And here is also a way of just breaking the ground to create those extra elements. Here again, the way they break, this is the way that I would like to have to see the buildings be broken, like just with these simple triangular shapes and the inside and the outside parts. So in that way, the painters will be like, okay, we have 3 or 4 tones to color these buildings. I know which color to color the inside tones and with which color to color the outside part of the buildings. Amazing. This is another reference on how to push these buildings in in 3 point perspective in some BGs that I'll show you, and this is our reference on how can we work with buildings in BGs or layouts that we have 2 points perspective, which I will show you too. So these are the first. Let's start with number 3. Then we're going backwards. So on this layout here that I have this dog looking at the owner with the other girls and the other 2 dogs, let's change the layout here from being 1 point to being 2 point perspective. So we're seeing these buildings going that direction and these buildings going that direction, and the negative space these buildings are created, this negative space here is making or is creating the space for the silhouette of the dog to be super highlighted here. That's the main thing here. And okay, the next layout is this one. One of the notes that I want, two main things that I wanted to mention is about simplicity and grouping elements. And while the by grouping elements, we avoid having the view of the audience to be in different places, but just focus or just favoring to focus on a specific place of the composition. So here, if we can group all of these rocks, all of these sharks here, all of those rocks, all of this destruction into one figure here, that will help the project big time and favor the composition. Here, for example, this is an example from Robert Valley, and I grabbed some paintings and some images, and I put him together just to show you how they group elements. And here, for example, they have the skull with the rocks, with these building structures all together. So that's something we can also do here. Put the bottle on top of these rocks or in the middle of the rocks, and the rocks, all of these pointing towards that direction, and grouping all of those, so we can create. We're not thinking only about the individual elements, but also the negative space or the silhouette that this negative space creates in relationship with the characters. So that's something. Also, the buildings here, the buildings here, we can just simplify the buildings. So the way these buildings are broken are more like triangular pointy shapes, like broken buttons, instead of having like these complex details. So when I mention simplification, it's not only simplification in terms of the inside details of the buildings, but also how we are breaking these buildings. So the outer shapes have to be also simplified. And the best thing to approach this is how you did it here for the pen here, how you design these buildings like normal, like super brand new, and on top of this we can break the designs. So we avoid having just blocky shapes like this, and we can actually have buildings that feels like have been destroyed. We're also getting rid of all the clouds, because we are not using clouds on this project. And yeah, let's bring more shape variety on these buildings, and let's make these buildings a little bit lower, because this is super far away in the distance. So we're actually seeing the top of the buildings. We're seeing all of the top of the buildings here. Maybe we can create little silhouettes here of small parts of the structures that are being just there, like these type of things. So yeah, I think these are very, very nice reference that we can use just to have those silhouettes in the background to create this sense of depth, that there is more things out there, but super, super subtle, so it's not catching the attention of the viewer into other directions that we don't want. And by grouping all those elements, we're helping to get to that intention. Here, on this shot, let's push the building super, super, super push into this 3 points perspective over here at the top. So when we're seeing the dogs, we're seeing, oh, dude, the dogs are so small compared to these buildings. And that's something that will help us like also feel like, dude, this city is huge. This city is huge. So we can get rid of the clouds here too and push these buildings up in perspective. And we can rework the design of the buildings to have something like this, super, super simple. But on top of that simplicity of those shapes, we can start breaking those designs. Not with this type of super complex way of breaking the buildings, but more simple, something just like this, something like this, in which we are showing both how the buildings we're showing both the inside part and the outer part of the buildings. So this is a great reference that I found, and that's something that will help us to keep this flat design on all the buildings, but at the same time showing depth just by adding those extra shapes. Amazing. Here, let's bring these buildings in the background a little bit down, so it looks smaller compared to the characters, because the characters, I want them to look huge. Here on number two, exactly the same. We can simplify the buildings and just having these simple shapes on top. Like most of the time when they break the buildings on this Powerpuff Girl are on top. Mostly when the buildings are far away in the distance, the way that they show the buildings are broken or destroyed is just by showing the top part being destroyed, so we can just simplify the bottom part. We can simplify the bottom part, and that will make the easier of the painter even easier too. Here, the props or the foreground elements, we can group all of them, and we can have, for example, here one of the rats being like cut in half, or just with one of those part of the structure just going out across the body of this rat. But grouping all of these elements exactly like here in this reference that I show you here, grouping all of these elements. Amazing. That's another detail. Here also we can simplify the way that the buildings are destroyed, but first having a clear design of the buildings, and on top of that clear design, breaking those shapes. Here, for example, is a cool way. I think you did this, and I was like, no, 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 no. Let's make all of the buildings flat. I like how they approach here this thing, but with super minimal details. And see, we have these super highly detailed buildings on the foreground, and super flat, solid color shapes on the background. That's something that we can add, these little shapes in the background to create this sense of depth. So we can play with that here. We can simplify the way the buildings are destroyed and group the elements here. We don't need this car here. Let's get rid of all the carts and all of those props here in the background, so we can just focus on this dude. Amazing. Here, okay, so one of the notes that I was mentioning is that I changed the animatic. I made some updates on the animatic, so there are some layouts that we are not going to have anymore, and those are mainly the layouts in which the dog is vomiting on the ground. the other BG when we are seeing the camera from below looking at the dog vomiting. And this one here, we are also not needing this background because I'm doing a complete camera rotation, 180 rotation. So I have to figure out how is that I'm going to do that in terms of layouts. So we don't need this layout for now. So I'm going to send you an export of all these notes that I'm doing, and all the BGs that are not included here are the BGs that we can hold on and not work on those for now until I reorganize things from the animatic, from the update that I did on the animatic. Here also we can group all of these elements and start just cutting these shapes. And the way of approaching the graffitis is super nice what you did there. So yeah, it could be super simple like that. Forget about what I say of like adding a specific graffitis or silhouettes. I think we can. I need to move forward with other stuff, like prioritizing other stuff. So what you have here is just perfect. It's just perfect. So yeah, the note here was just simplifying the details, not only from the buildings, the inside parts, but also the outer silhouettes. Here, another thing that I did is that I moved all the buildings lower. I put all those buildings lower because the size relationship between these legs and the buildings have to be fixed, and also because these buildings are far away in the distance, we also need them to be smaller. We also need to be smaller, and by make this smaller, I create all of this beautiful negative space around the legs of the character that will make the composition breathe, but also will allow me to have all the attention of the audience here at the bottom part of the screen. Let's get rid of this car, because also I will say like, yeah, let's make the car smaller to fix the size relationship with the legs of the robot, but now let's just clean and let's leave this empty so I can put the crowd characters around this robot, which is the idea for the scene. So yeah, let's group those elements. Let's get rid of this rock. Let's put it over here if needed, but let's try to keep this the space empty. We can have little rocks like this in the ground, so we can have some texture in that part. It's not like just a solid color when the time of coloring comes. That's for this scene. For this scene over here, also let's bring the buildings super low, because we are seeing the buildings far away in the distance, and we are having the camera here below, and we're seeing we are creating this silhouette with the legs of the robot that are this one, and the buildings are super far away, so we can just lower them and have them super destroyed and simplified, and grouped all of these buildings. So yeah, it doesn't take too much of the attention of the viewer, and we can have these ones straight. We can have those ones straight. Here on this shot, again, we don't need to see like too much of like the inside or all the parts of the window and how this thing works. Now we can have just flat shapes here, maybe some destruction here on the buildings. This is perfect. And here inside of the building, I also need some little rocks, maybe like this inside, so it's showing like, oh, maybe the ceiling just folded and there's like a lot of rocks around. So let's add some props here, but also grouping them and keeping them low in detail, so the main focus here is the character. That is in regards of this one here. Let's go to number one. And on number one, oh, this is a mess. On number one, okay, let's go here. Okay, let's go here. On this one here, let's bring the buildings lower, comparing this relationship with the main character here. They have to be a little bit below the robot. So we're moving these buildings lower, and let's simplify. We don't need these 3D edges here and all of that. Cubes, dynamic shape of different type of cubes, the difference in variety in size, in shape design, but playing with the main silhouette or shape of cubes. But giving this variety, maybe we can have something like this. Oopsie, we can have like a little part here, like it then comes here. Then this building is something like this, like this. So let's play with cubes, but let's add variety in the shapes and also on the size of all of this. And let's show like the top part of this building, and instead of tilting this a bit, let's have them a little bit straight, because this composition is already a little bit dynamic already. And yeah, so we can see the ground here, so we're seeing this perspective, this cube here. Awesome. Again, let's simplify, and once we have those cubes and that variety in cubes, we can break those shapes to create these amazing pointy shapes like this. Boop. Awesome. Okay, that in regards of that BG. Now here on this one, Let's make the buildings also a little bit lower, and let's play with super simple shape design. 1 second. Yeah. So as I was mentioning, we have these buildings here, and we can have buildings. We can have, so the buildings are in the background or in the middle ground are going to have a line art, and the buildings that will have like a super far away in the background will be super flat shapes. Look who is here. So those are the buildings. It's a recording, by the way. So these are the buildings, and on the foreground elements of the buildings, we can approach it in the same way that we were doing, or that you did here on the pan layout. So we can reuse the same buildings you have here. After breaking them, we can just reuse them here. And that's another detail that I wanted to just mention, is that I need all the buildings to be in different layers so I can reuse them if needed on other scenes. So, okay, so that's about that one. And here, okay, here this is a tricky one. This is a tricky one because this is the location design of this scene. We're having the main dock that is in the middle of the street, and we're having the two docks that are in two different parts of the street. Like this one is on this side and this one is on this side. But the dock that is on this side is behind or below this window here that the owner is inside. So I will send you the updated animatic, and you will see how this dog that is here is below the owner that is on this side. So the part of we're having like a flat grouping of elements of buildings on the side of the owner, and we're having an opening here between these two buildings on the side of the other dog, which is this dog over here. So this BG will be open here, and this BG here, now this BG here will be open, and this BG here will be a complete flat shape that will have all the buildings, maybe the building's door here. Another thing to consider is that this is the side of the Chihuahuas, so the building doors will be around here, and all of this will be windows. So we're not seeing the windows of the dog here, but only the doors of the dog. So yeah, those are the notes, and yeah, hope you find this helpful. I'll send you both videos. This one, which is the short one, and the other one, long one, if you would like to see it, is like a long video. But yeah, hope this helps, and thank you very much again, Malissa, for the help. Bye. Last part of the video, Malissa, I almost forget. So here, this is the line thickness that we're going to use for this project. We're having this line. We're not being picky like on dog shit on this one, because it's not a big deal. So we're having like this type of line thickness. We're using this poster from the Powerpuff Girls as reference. I'm having this line thickness for the characters, and we're having this line thickness for the background. Now, we're working with super flat shapes, only colors on the buildings are going to be only silhouettes and far away in the background, and all the backgrounds, midgrounds, and foreground elements will have this line thickness. So yeah, this will be the main reference instead of in terms of line thickness. And this is also my main reference for the final look that I want to achieve for the project. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Bye!